yeah, Franz Beckenbauer is the footballing GOAT in Germany by a long stretch, actually. But I think that Germany will be the disappointment in the tournament.
Welcome, everybody, to Make Football Great Again, your definitive 48-nation roadmap to the 2026 World Cup. I'm Harry Brent, and over the coming weeks and months, we're profiling every single nation heading to the tournament this summer to find out more, not just about the teams, but about the countries, cultures, and fans involved. And hopefully, we'll uncover a few little stories and secrets along the way, too. Today, though, we're covering Germany, four-time winners of the World Cup, of course. And I'm thrilled to say that we're joined by a man who's got his finger on the pulse of German football like very few others. None other than former footballer and host of the German Fussball Podcast, Markus Fjørtoft. We'll put a link to that podcast in the description so you guys can check them out and give them some love. Markus, thanks so much for being here. How's it all going? Wie geht's?
Sehr gut, mit mir und dir, gut?
Yeah, that's the extent of my good. German, so I'm not going to go for any more.
Same. I won't say I let on a lot more than I give off, but no, all is good. I look forward to discussing this with you. It's a great project, this, in terms of covering each and every team. I look forward to following. I have already followed, just getting an insight into each and every team, and that's what the beauty is of the World Cup. Germany probably a bit more familiar than most, but nonetheless, I think there's a lot to discuss because it's an interesting time for the German national team.
Yes, certainly is a lot to discuss. So in a second, we'll find out all we can about Germany and the team and what we can expect from them at the tournament this summer. But before we get officially cracking, Markus, I'm just going to kick off with a segment that I like to call One Truth and One Lie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present two seemingly crazy facts about the German national team. One of those facts is completely true. The other one is completely false. I just made it up this morning. So I'll read them back to back, and then you let me know which you think is the true fact. So,
okay.
Fact number, if I can sense the concern in your voice there.
So well, we'll see. I mean, it depends how good your lie is.
Yes, that's true. So fact number one. For a 2-year stretch in the 1950s, the German squad were required to conduct all press conferences while wearing traditional Bavarian lederhosen. The German FA believed that wearing such uncomfortable leather would instill a sense of grit and discipline in the players. Fact number two. After the 1966 World Cup final, Germany midfielder Helmut Höhler snatched the match ball and ran off the pitch with it. He kept the ball hidden in his house in Germany for 30 years until 1996, when a British newspaper tracked him down and convinced him to return the ball to England. So which do you think is the true fact, Markus? Did the German national team for a period have to wear lederhosen in press conferences, or did Helmut Höhler steal the match ball from the 1966 World Cup final?
Two very good, convincing statements from you. I'm just doing it through sheer logic and trying to read your mind, despite me meeting you for the very first time, but also the nature of the time period we're in, how many press conferences, how well publicized would they be. So I am leaning towards the match ball. I would love that story to be true. It's still something that I think bugs Germans just slightly, whether the ball was in or out, and maybe that had a symbolic purpose or some catharsis for Helmut. So I will go with the second one. I think that one is the truth, and the lederhosen is the lie.
That is absolutely correct. You're absolutely right. Yeah. So he did, in fact, steal the match ball. And I mentioned the newspaper tracking him down. It was, in fact, the Mirror who tracked him down. So yours truly doing the...
That's a great story. Oh, that is a great story, though, to be fair.
So Germany, 4-time winners of the World Cup, as we've mentioned, in 1954, 1974, 1990, and 2014. And in each final, they've beaten a side featuring one of football's all-time great players, beating Ferenc Puskás's Hungary in 1954, Johan Cruyff's Netherlands in 1974, Diego Maradona's Argentina in 1990, and Lionel Messi's Argentina in 2014. But before we talk about the 2026 World Cup, Marcus, I just want to kick off with a segment we call the travel log. So before we talk players and tactics, I just want to find out a little bit more about the country, the culture, the fans, and the history behind the German national team. So I'm going to put you on the spot straight away. Who would you say is Germany's footballing GOAT?
Footballing GOAT. I mean, you mentioned some great players there, and I think what Germany have done such a good job of is cultivating these legends. I mean, 4 World Cup victories cultivates a certain legend. It's almost to the point in which if you haven't won the World Cup, your opinion really does not matter as much. And so when you're listing out these people, you say Miroslav Klose, he's the world all-time World Cup top scorer. Could be one of them. You have Gerd Müller, the bomber, the all-time goal scorer for Bayern, 68 goals in 62 games, I believe, for Germany. You have Lothar Matthäus, as you said, 5 World Cups, captain, the emblematic leader of Germany. But there is only one true GOAT, and that is Franz Beckenbauer. And Franz Beckenbauer, in terms of his sheer influence, his time was obviously before both of ours, but his legacy has always remained on German football and on Bayern's footballing history as such. Remember, Bayern weren't the Bayern we know now until the early 70s when they got promoted from the Zweite Bundesliga and into the Bundesliga then. And he was part of that generation that won 3 consecutive European Cups, redefined the libero role, elegance embodied as such. And then went on to obviously win the World Cup, not only as a player in 74, but as a manager in 1990. And I think it's him and 2 others, and I have it in my notes. It's Brazil, Mario Zagallo and Didier Deschamps. So an exclusive group as such, but he is as many legends as there is in German football. To be so dominantly number 1 is quite the feat, but I think that says everything about what Franz Beckenbauer was as a player, and who he was as a person, in his impact. So, yeah, Franz Beckenbauer is the footballing GOAT in Germany by a long stretch, actually.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, that, you know, we've done a lot of these podcasts. And as you say, the truly successful nations generally have it, you know, it's quite close between 2 or 3 players. But the fact that Beckenbauer, for a nation like Germany, is so far ahead in the eyes of the locals, it just does say everything there is to say about him. What would you say is Germany's most celebrated football result? We mentioned the World Cup wins. There have been 3 European Championship wins as well. Which one stands above the rest?
I guess it depends what generation you ask, and you know what's fortunate for myself, and I had a father obviously who played in Germany, who loves Germany. We run the podcast together where we're able to deal with a German football community across all ages. And I'm not saying our listeners go all the way back to when Germany won in Bern in 54, but of course that has a huge symbolic meaning, as well as a political, cultural one. We have to remember that this was in the wake of the Second World War. It was when Germany slowly but surely were trying to recover from what was a very dark period in their history. It was the first time they slowly but surely maybe could embrace a sense of a nationalism again. And you alluded to it initially there, but they play Hungary in the final, hadn't lost for 4 years. They're playing Ferenc Puskás. They lost 8-3 in the group stages, and then you have the likes of a Helmut Rahn, you have a Fritz Walter, these legends that I only heard of, but I looked through when I watched The Miracle in Bern, which is a great movie. It's more about football, and I think that's the beauty of football. That's what the World Cup represents as well. It's so much more than football. It's national pride. It's the symbolism that comes with it. It's the different cultures coming together. So then you have the 54, and then you have the 74, which is my dad's generation, and the Cruyff era and the Beckenbauer era, 90, obviously, and Klinsmann's and all that comes with it. And then what I remember, probably what you remember better as well, is 2014 with Mario Götze. So I think they each have their significance throughout their times. I think the World Cup is obviously the pinnacle for any nation, and they stand out as one. And I think they represent different parts of Germany's history as well. So it's hard for me to give a definitive answer, but I think all those four represent some kind of the core of what Germany is and what we tend to associate with the national team.
I can say from an English perspective, it must be very nice to sort of consider multiple tournament wins to be the one that you put above the rest. We certainly don't have that.
I know. Here. Well, we'll be struggling when I come to Norway, so we'll we'll enjoy this for now.
Speaking of England, England are managed by a German, Thomas Tuchel. Do Germans feel betrayed by that, or do they wish him well?
I wouldn't say there is a kind of a betrayal. I think it's more so a case of, well, he's there, and it's also a statement of Germany's rich coaching history as well, comparative to England. I mean, we can look at the coaches that Germany have produced, even just of late, in the form of a Nagelsmann that we will go into, a Klopp, a Tuchel, etc. So and a Löw and a Flick, and the list goes on. So I think it's, on one hand, it's sort of a statement of Germany's rich coaching history, and then the fact that the England favor Tuchel more. In Germany, it's not as strong, but it doesn't really verge on betrayal. Really, it's more so, well, that's all right. It's good for him, and then all the best.
Yeah, you mentioned a few of the names that the great managers that Germany have produced in recent years. There's obviously talk of Nagelsmann. We'll come to on him a little bit, but there's kind of talk about who might take the reins after him. Tuchel has been a name that's sort of bandied about, but so has Jürgen Klopp. Obviously now the head of global soccer at Red Bull following his Liverpool stint. Now he says he's not going to come back to management. I mean, he's sort of alluded to the fact that he could maybe, he's been a bit he's left the door open, shall we say. Is there hope in Germany that he will come out of retirement, a managerial retirement, and manage the national team?
I think the shadow of Jürgen Klopp hangs over Julian Nagelsmann pretty significantly. And I think there is one thing Klopp says, and there's another which his eyes give away, his smile gives away. We know his face, his animated face at time. I think it's a case of, I mean, this training a national team, it's a different rhythm as to training Liverpool or coaching Liverpool, right? In terms of intensity, the sheer amount of games, what have you. Klopp decided to take a step away, and it's a very exciting role as that. Can we argue in terms of how much of that is functional, technical, practical, as opposed to symbolic, as he is as an ambassador for Red Bull, as one of the true coaching greats? That is one aspect. But of course, he will have the itch. And when your nation come calling, there is this kind of inevitability, this romance in the idea of Jürgen Klopp taking over Germany. Nagelsmann, which we'll get into, has failed to capture that imagination. It's hard when you compare yourself to as a charismatic figure as Klopp, but it is something that feels inevitable. As to when it happens, I'm sure Nagelsmann signed an extension. So for as far as a contract is concerned, that will not happen for another few years. But I think Nagelsmann feels that because A, he's failed to capture that enthusiasm, which he did rather well initially, and B, he's dependent on results. And going into this tournament, well, there are question marks related to that. And then there could be a quite different story. And I don't think Jürgen Klopp would be all too difficult to ask to take over this Germany job.
Of all the German footballers to have played in the Premier League, who for you is the best and who is the most underrated? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I feel a lot of responsibility to this question because the Farmers League gets thrown at the Bundesliga. And it's always funny to see when we look at the performance in the Champions League and the players that come from the Bundesliga and how willing they are to pay for them. But I would say the best in terms of impact, in terms of silverware, for me is Ilkay Gundogan and what he represented as a leader for Manchester City. Remember, he was at Dortmund, very good player at Dortmund, struggled with injuries. I would even go as far as to say he reinvented his career at Manchester City. And of course, Guardiola, when initially letting him go, wanting to get him back. And from a quality perspective, but also from the leadership perspective. Captain, Germany, City, all that comes with it. So for me, he's the best. I'd say he's underrated, and well, can you say he's underrated? But for me, he's still underrated, and I say this as objective as I can, despite him being an Arsenal fan. For me, is Mesut Ozil. I think there's been all too much of a narrative around his body language in terms of output. Remember, there was a season, and we're on the verge now of having that record broken, but for amount of assists during a season, I think it was 19 assists during a season. He came with a heavy price tag, but wow, the impact he had at Arsenal. I've always been a fan of this type of player. And yeah, I do think he's still, whether underrated, maybe underappreciated. And then there are so many other German players in the fold. You can have, well, the Balaks or the Klinsmanns or the list goes on. But yeah, those are the two for me.
Now, for those tuning in, let us know who you think is the best German player to have played in the Premier League and the most underrated. Why not? Head to the comment section to have your say. Right, Markus, we'll move on to the section we call the scouting report. So here we'll find out a little bit more about Germany, the team, and what we can expect from them this summer. So just for the British fans tuning in, remind us, who are we going to recognise in Germany's squad? Who are are there any Premier League players, any former Premier League players? What can you tell us?
Well, I mean, we can go back to front. We can start with a Rudiger, who might or might not play. It will be Schlotterbeck or Tah in as the centre back pairing, but we know obviously Rudiger from Chelsea. Other than that, it will be a mostly Bundesliga dominated back four and goalkeepers. And then when we get higher up, obviously we have the likes of a Leroy Sané, who I'm a big fan of, but perhaps question marks around, or there are question marks around his consistency. I think there were spells in the German national team in which when he's been at his best, and he is a lovely player to watch, PFA Young Player of the Year at City, but never maybe took that extra step. Now at Galatasaray, Nagelsmann saying, I need to see performances from Leroy Sané if he's going to Galatasaray, to the Turkish league, from the Bundesliga, from Bayern. Hasn't really materialized as much. You have a Nick Woltemade, a Kai Havertz, who are fighting for spots at the number 9, which will be interesting to see. Bit inconsistent seasons, to say the least, for the both of them, due to injuries, due to form, due to team selection. Serge Gnabry will be out of the World Cup. Had a very good season for Bayern, but unfortunately tore his abductor, so he won't be at the World Cup either. So there's a fair few players that for the Premier League audience, and of course we've seen these players at Bayern as well. And I would say this much, as a strong Bayern is always a good sign for a strong Germany team as well. And that's why it's important that Bayern do as well as they do, that Kompany's impact will equally have an impact on the national team as well. And then we will see whether it's a Musiala, or if it's a Florian Wirtz, who I forgot as well, from a Premier League perspective as well, who I think will be key and will be the talisman for Germany if they want to do well with this tournament.
Yeah, some big names there, but Germany generally aren't banded around much as favourites or people sort of suggesting that they might win the tournament. Do you think they're underrated at all? Do you think, given the quality in the squad, that they're actually, people are underestimating them?
It's a good question, because we have, on one hand, my dear Norway, we are so underestimated that we become almost overestimated. And then you have teams that are over, so it goes in this funny cycle.
Yeah.
I don't think Germany are underestimated. I think what comes with being the German national team, there is an expectations, whether you like it or not, depending on, regardless of what stage you're in, that you come there to win. You mentioned in terms of the finals, they won four times world champions. For Germany to come there and say, "Oh, we're happy with a quarterfinal," would be fundamentally very underwhelming. I think we can get into that as well in terms of what constitutes a proper good tournament. I think semi-final they would do extremely well. Realistically, quarterfinal, anything before that will be a huge disappointment. What saved Germany at the Euros at home was, of course, that they played a very good Spain in the quarterfinals. Spain obviously went on to win. They have the Cucurella handball. Germany played a good game. There was that. It was the optimism of Nagelsmann taking over. Remember, he took over at a very dire state in Germany's, a very dire state for Germany. They were playing very poorly. There wasn't any kind of optimism. There wasn't any style to see. And Nagelsmann came in with a little of authority. He said, "Oh, I'm going to pick a team based off form." He left some key players out. He said, "No, I'm picking based off pedigree, not on past history." And it was refreshing to see, and I think it reinvigorated the national team to a great extent. But then, of course, you find yourself in a couple of poor Nations League results, a less than convincing qualifying campaign, and suddenly all that enthusiasm and goodwill that was with Nagelsmann got tapped out a bit. And then he's had to kind of reinvigorate this enthusiasm around it, so that we now go into this tournament a bit. We don't really know. It's just we'll see what happens, and I think that is maybe the mediocrity, or the kind of not overwhelmed, not underwhelmed, just somewhere in the middle, and that leaves Germany at a funny place as to what we can expect from them. But of course, should win the group, should go to last 16, and then we'll see in the quarterfinals, because as we know, that's when it gets very real.
Florian Wirtz, he was electric for Bayer Leverkusen prior to his move to Liverpool, has been generally struggling at Liverpool. I know his second half of the season has perhaps, been a little bit better than the first half, but hasn't produced the sort of football that certainly Bundesliga fans were treated to from him. Do you think he will rediscover his spark, that we saw at Leverkusen, at Anfield, or have Liverpool wasted their money, Markus?
I'm a big Florian Wirtz fan and followed him in the Bundesliga. And then people say, well, it's the Bundesliga, and we can go through down that road another time, because again, we've seen plenty of examples going from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. But then you look at simultaneously what he was performing at Champions League when Bayer Leverkusen went on to win the league, when he had 5 man of the match awards in a row in that Champions League campaign, in terms of the confidence he played at, the way he was able to dictate games, the way we've seen in spells for Liverpool, but not as consistently, when he's able to take on his man, when he's able to find that space, when he can be both provider and executioner. That is Florian Wirtz's best. And I think what you have seen in spells at Liverpool, you saw all the more consistently at Leverkusen. And I think that's completely natural, because Florian Wirtz made that move deliberately. He's been very close-knit with his family. He left Cologne under controversial circumstances early on to Leverkusen, because they are in the same region. They shouldn't transfer each other's players. That's a different story. But he deliberately sought Liverpool because he knew that was the more difficult choice. And going a first season into a Premier League which is extremely intense, less time on the ball, a different type of football, moving a different life on the personal aspect as well. And that's why I think we maybe failed to recognize that, despite the 100 million price tag, and we can say, well, 100 million, he should deal with that. Yeah, fair. We can make these arguments, but he's a human nonetheless, and he needs that adaptation period in a season that's been difficult for Liverpool for many different reasons, where a Liverpool team have suffered as well, but maybe coming on a bit better. Then Florian Wirtz can find his feet more. So I'm very optimistic for Florian Wirtz. I was extremely envious of Liverpool getting Wirtz at the time. I still am. And I think, he will come on very, very strong into the second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever season. And as for Germany, we saw that in the last international break when they played against Switzerland. In fact, how good he is when he had the long shot, just the way he's able to take control of a game. So don't worry about Florian Wirtz quite yet. That's what I'll say.
You mentioned you're an Arsenal fan. What is Kai Havertz's best position? I mean, in England, we've seen him, shift between number 10, number 8, number 9, false 9, inside forward. He's been all sorts of different positions. Has never really truly felt like he's settled in one of them. Where is his best position for you, and where does he play for Germany?
Well, I think Kai Havertz's best role is as the 9. And you see that because of where he's being selected for Germany and where he's being selected for Arsenal. when he's been available for Arsenal, when you play him in key games, you play a City away, Kai Havertz is up front. When Germany are looking for a number 9, they are looking for a Kai Havertz. The plus is obviously his versatility, that he can play in the 8. That's what Arteta probably brought him in as more the more advanced role in a 3 or as a 10 or what have you. But what I've been impressed by Kai Havertz, he has a grit to him and a bit of, I say, a positive nastiness to him. He wins a lot of balls in the air, so he works as a decent target man where he can play that role. He's very good technically as well, and when he broke through at Leverkusen onto Chelsea in terms of playing that deep role as well. So then you have a lot of different qualities there for the team to use. And so yeah, for me, he's the number 9. I think Nagelsmann is desperate for Kai Havertz to be fit for Germany. For him, we've had the Füllkrugs, who had less than a fortunate spell at West Ham. You had a Kleindienst at Gladbach. But he's waiting for Kai Havertz. The same way he used Kai Havertz in the Euros in 2004, he will look for Havertz then. And I think it is the best choice for Germany as well, because, of course, when you have a Wirtz, a Musiala, a Karl, a Sané, a leveling, what comes with it, he's a good connector for Germany to utilize. So, yeah, number 9, and then, yeah, the benefit of being used in other positions is always a plus.
What is the verdict on Julian Nagelsmann? You sort of touched on it there. He took over when the team was in a bit of a dire state. But intriguingly, you mentioned before there's the shadow of Jürgen Klopp looming over him. Where is Julian Nagelsmann in terms of his Germany career, and what is the verdict internally for Nagelsmann? Yeah,
I won't repeat what I said earlier in terms of the stages that he went in. But if we can judge the last few months, it's been an interesting time to be Julian Nagelsmann and to be a German football audience, because he has had some less than fortunate statements in the press. He had a tell-all, big interview where he was saying, "Well, I've already made my positions." He basically said pretty early on, "I've already decided who's going to play. I've already let them know." That obviously had its implications when Dennis Undav was in the frame. Dennis Undav is the most informed striker for Germany at this moment of time. Played very well for Stuttgart in the Bundesliga, second top scorer to Harry Kane. And then you have him in the Europa League in terms of the goal, assists, and what have you. Now, there's a difference. If Julian Nagelsmann doesn't prefer Dennis Undav, that is one thing, and that is fine. The problem with Julian Nagelsmann is he pretty early on goes out pretty confidently with these statements that he almost has to back himself on later in time. So he takes over. He says, "I only pick players based on form." Okay, fine enough. I respect that. That's good for you. Then when a Leroy Sané comes into the fold, or a Dennis Undav comes into the fold, and they're not performing as well, and the statements suddenly shift from, "Well, Leroy Sané has a proven history at the German national team. He's got great strength, and that's also why I want to continue playing him," etc. Certain contradictions come into play. The same for Undav. And interestingly, just a few weeks ago, he apologized for the statements he made about Dennis Undav in the wake of the last international break, where he rather than praising Dennis Undav for coming on and scoring for Germany, being a match winner, in which he got 45 minutes in the total of 2 games, he listed all the reasons why Dennis Undav was not going to start and why he was playing poorly. One of which being, "I don't want to start let's see if he had just scored in the first 75 minutes. Let's see if he would have dealt with the heat. Let's see," etc., etc. And then you're looking, well, he's Germany's most informed striker. He starts every game. He scores, he assists, and what have you. Rather than just saying, "I prefer a different type of profile of player." This might sound minuscule for the people that are listening into this for the first time and thinking, well, what have you? But from a communication standpoint, Nagelsmann has been extremely poor these last few months. And I find it very interesting because in a World Cup scenario where you have less than convincing alternatives on the number 9, you have a Füllkrug, a Kleindienst out, Johnny Burkhardt, etc. Undav could suddenly be the remedy. He could suddenly be the number 9 for Germany. So that, and the lack of ability then to kind of cultivate a good feel around the team, that's what surprised me. And I think it's also starting to reveal, and depending on who you ask, why things maybe didn't go as right at Bayern from a communication standpoint. And then you use as the reverse company in terms of how you manage a squad, in terms of how you manage the hierarchy, in terms of how you manage these big players. And that's why I think these cracks are being a bit exposed. And lastly on that, I think the problem with Nagelsmann is, and I sound biased, but I think he's starting to believe his own hype a bit too much. You have to remember, he came up as a 28, 29-year-old coach for Hoffenheim, a messiah as such. Bayern paid an enormous compensation fee to get him out of RB Leipzig. And he's been the Wunderkind since the very beginning. And I think when his disposition and all that comes with it, it doesn't sit right. And I try to be as objective as possible, but he has just to be a bit careful in terms of how he carries himself within that media. Now I ended up sounding like a rant on Nagelsmann, which it is not, but it's interesting these last few months how that has developed.
Just lastly on this section, if you could take one England player and put him in Germany's team for the World Cup, who would you pick and why?
Yeah, Harry Kane. Yeah, Harry Kane. I've listed all the problems with the number 9 and everything, but not only because it's Harry Kane, but it's where Germany are structurally and quality-wise underserved. I think you still could have played a Kai Havertz in the 3 behind him. You could have played a Havertz, Wirtz, Musiala, for all I care. But Harry Kane would have been the missing piece for that Germany team. And I think then if you have, you see how Harry Kane does by himself, but also what he does with very good wingers around him in a Luis Diaz and Olise in this 25-26 season as well. I think that would have been, the best addition for Germany.
Right, we'll just wrap up with some rapid fire questions about the World Cup before I get your controversial prediction for the tournament, Markus. But I'm going to put you on the spot again. Who's winning the 2026 World Cup?
Who is winning? I am factoring in momentum. I'm factoring in weather. I played in America. That humidity will kill you, even though you are the fittest man alive. Not to say that I was, but it's tough to adapt to. I look at France as and it sounds like the safe choice, but I think France, just in terms of a squad depth, in terms of the players that they have now, what they have disposable, they could play ABC team and they could all be favorites for the World Cup. And then Spain. I'm less convinced by the South American teams. I don't know where I have Argentina. So I will go safe, but what I feel most confident about is France.
What about Germany? What round do they reach?
I think a quarterfinal for Germany. A quarterfinal. Okay. I think it'll be very tough for them to get to the semifinal. They aren't some of the 4 best teams in the world. But I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think that Germany will be the disappointment in the tournament. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. But I don't know with that back line, with the midfield there, a lacking out and out top scorer. I'm not all too convinced with how far Germany will go. Quarterfinal max for me.
Mm-hmm. Who's winning the Golden Ball? So the best player at the tournament.
I think Harry Kane again. I'm looking at the goal scorer. You could compare him with a Erling Haaland, and I think England will go further than Norway. So Harry Kane will be my top scorer.
Wow. Big news for the 3 Lions. And what about the Golden Boot? I mean, maybe we can assume what the answer will be, given your Golden Ball prediction.
Yeah, I think Harry Kane again. I think this is a huge season for Harry Kane, and I say this maybe with a slight Bayern bias, a German football bias. But I think Harry Kane, if he can, have a very successful season with Bayern, which he already has, can do with England as well. I think he is, in the Ballon d'Or contention. And I don't think there's any player that more deserves winning that than Harry Kane.
Mm-hmm. And to wrap us up, what is your controversial / outrageous prediction for the 2026 World Cup?
I'm looking through here. I think well, controversial, maybe more of a. I think we'll see an African team in the semi-final again, and I think we will see Senegal, who's in Norway's group. Of the African teams, I'm thinking through Morocco and Egypt, Ivory Coast, who's in Germany's group. I think we are seeing now, in terms of the infrastructure, the development that is going. I was fortunate enough to go to AFCON as well. I'm seeing the professionalism around there, the setup, and the quality, not to say the least. I think Senegal will go to a semi-final of the World Cup.
Wow. Oh, I like that. I like that. Well, you heard it here first, folks. If that does indeed happen, send Markus his flowers. They'll be richly deserved. Markus, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. Well, that does it for our Germany preview. Let us know in the comments how you think the Germans will get on at the World Cup. And join us next time for more stories, insights, and deep dives as our global scouting mission continues as we count down the days to the 2026 World Cup. Until next time, keep making football great again.